Jamie's here. Jamie?
Yeah, sorry about that, everybody. My power went out. Came out back
What
on.
happened? You know what? One speaker today is in storm and he couldn't join because of the storm.
Well,
So,
we're having the same here. So
oh my
yeah,
God.
I appreciate everybody's patience, and I'll share my screen here in a second. Let me just get everything opened. But team, what I'm going to be able to do today is show you specifically social selling from a different perspective. It's going to be very tactical. I'm going to show you how to mine signal intelligence out of tools like LinkedIn to be able to make informed decisions. And those informed decisions are around the most important piece to prospecting, which is account selection and account prioritization. So let me share my screen, and then we'll dive into, I have a few, I have a few slides as to the why, but really we're going to be spending the vast majority of this presentation looking at how. So can everybody see my screen? I just want to make sure that as the power went out, you can see my screen that says prioritization best practices. Let me just check the chat box. Yes, okay, fantastic. So team, here is why you want to be thinking about evolving using tools like LinkedIn. Now, I recognize that in the Russian Federation, this is an emerging tool in comparison to where I live in Toronto, Canada. But it's important to understand two things. One, if you sell into global businesses, the key stakeholders within those companies, they're not always just in Russia. And number two, like any technology, what you used last year will be different than this year and will be different than next year. I can tell you around the world, some of our customers have started using Facebook for business. They've started using Zing and WhatsApp and Weibo and WeChat and Line. These are all different tools around the world. Don't be thinking about the tool as the end result. I want you to think process before platform. And if you understand that these processes will be what stays, but the platforms will evolve, you could use these plays time and time again. So why should we evolve? And I just mentioned this, that Gartner has been measuring the percentage of sales professionals that have been making their sales quota since the year 2011. And it used to be that 6 out of 10 sellers would make their sales quota. And every year, that number got worse and worse. The year before COVID, 2019, less than 50% of sales professionals around the world globally were not making their sales quota. And let me just quickly, I have two internet and it should stabilize everything. So what Gartner did is they bought another company called Topo that was measuring the percentage of sellers that were not making their quota. And what they found was that 83.4% of those people were not making their quota because of poor time management. So what does poor time management mean? Well, it actually is account selection and account prioritization are the number 1 and 2 reasons. That means that sellers are artificially calling through the phone book, just picking random accounts in their named account list or in their geographic territory or verticalized territory. And they're not thinking critically and objectively as to why they're spending time on those accounts. And the bigger problem is that when they are getting ready to engage those accounts, the sales team thinks that when they're adding the most value is when they're live in the boardroom or when you're on a Zoom call like we are right now. But in fact, as the buyer, and I want you to picture you're all buyers right now, it's actually a really small percentage of the time we would spend together. It's actually only 17% of the buying journey. The other 83%, you as the buyer would reach out to your peer-to-peer network. You would do online due diligence. You would start doing deep research through Google. You don't need me as the sales professional to tell you about best practices. So that between the sellers not digitizing themselves and the buyer changing, a lot is affecting how we have to think about sales quota. Now, the teams, the customers of ours, we have 500 global customers around the world. The customers that embrace social selling create on average 20% more sales pipeline in 6 to 12 months. Why? And it's because learning new skills and applying those in the market are the ultimate leading indicators to success. And in fact, our customer CA technology for 5 years measured this. And they found that a seller who learned new skills that I'm going to show you on the call today, and they actually applied them in the market, created 55% more pipeline and 38% more revenue than sellers that were stuck in a non-social selling or an analog world. And so with that, why don't we actually dive into best practices? So what is social selling? For everybody on the call, let me define it for you. Whether you like it or not, your customers are going on a journey. They're going to evolve and they're going to learn with or without you. The question you have to ask yourself is, how do I meet them halfway? How do I help them? And every day you're using triggers, referrals, insights, and competitive intelligence. You're acquiring this information from Google and LinkedIn and all these tools to make informed decisions. That's what we need to do. It's all that social selling is, digitizing the collection of information to make informed decisions and using it to engage. So all this information for the first time has been made publicly available over the last 5 to 10 years on social platforms, on digital platforms. You're not changing how you sell. You're changing how you're acquiring information and then communicating with your customer. So with that, why don't we dive into a few tips that are going to help you along the journey? Number one, the biggest change that you can make is how you identify accounts to select and prioritize, specifically about analyzing the opportunity in those accounts or analyzing the risk. So let me show you what I mean. Signals come in 5 categories. If you're in marketing, you're already used to this one here, buying intent. That means people are Googling keywords, raising their hand, telling people at your company, I want to learn more. They're downloading your ebooks, they're going to your webinars, they've listened to your podcast. That's one category. Category number 2, for any of you who have a customer success team, you might sell a software. You can monitor who's using more of that software, less of that software, using it the right way, using it the wrong way. That's called product usage. But then there's these categories called compelling events. Humans are the ones that make decisions in businesses. Imagine that humans are going into businesses, out of businesses, being promoted in companies. They're growing their departments, they're shrinking their departments, they're recruiting for their departments. All of these are early leading indicators to where either a priority is going to change in a business for you or leave and take the priority away. So why don't we actually monitor these? So let's actually do this together. What I'd like you to all do on the call is picture that you are her right here. You all have life experiences. You went to certain universities. You might run marathons. You might collect items. You engage on social platforms. These are all things that make up you. And you have what's called a sphere of influence. Now, to make this real, as an example, I went to 2 universities. I went to the University of Ottawa in Ottawa, Canada, and I went and did my master's degree in Adelaide, Australia. I can actually search any university in the world. Specifically, this is you reverse engineering your world. And I ask myself, who went to my university, lived in Australia, but then now moved away and moved to Russia? And because when I'm communicating with these people, like Marcus, what it offers me is the ability to connect at a human level. We can talk about the beaches in Australia, or living in wine country where most of Australia's wine comes from Adelaide. And I can connect on a personal level and then engage in a business conversation. So it allows me to, we both in the business program, as an example, let's picture that Marcus actually made up my ideal customer profile. And I'm messaging Marcus, Marcus, when was the last time you went back to Adelaide? I see you were there a bunch of years ago. Did you ever go to Wolf Blass Winery, or did you ever go swimming in the ocean there? By the way, I notice that you work at this company. We also serve the petroleum industry. Would love to know more how I can help. The probability that Marcus is much more engaged to me because we connected on a personal level it's far greater than if I just called his business and cold called in with no relevancy. So the reason I'm showing you this is once you understand that you have a sphere of influence, then you recognize that your customers have a sphere of influence. So what's happening in your own customer base is people will up and leave and they'll go into accounts. They might even up and leave and go into accounts that are very important to you, named accounts. I can tell you who's recruiting all the IT leaders or HR leaders or marketing leaders out of your customers. I could even see who are the best people from your customers to be referrals to another business. So let's make this real. What I want you to picture is what I've done here is I took some of our customers right here, company. But what I did is reverse engineered it. I asked it to look for past, not current employees of Intel, Microsoft, and Thomson Reuters. I sell into Russia. I sell to the C level, the director and the VP in sales. And what you have are people that up and leave our customers and they go into other businesses. And so each one of these people, depending on the year that you served these customers, have one thing in common. They used to be at Microsoft. They may have gone through our training at Sales for Life, and they've up and left and went to a different business in Russia. Now, when I'm communicating with Victor, I have something valuable to talk about. By the way, Victor, we've trained all Microsoft Azure sellers around the world. And so now that you are over at this bank or you're at Yandex, I have something to talk about because you experienced our services when you were at Microsoft. Actually, it's 6 times cheaper and easier to sell to somebody you've already sold to than it is to identify somebody you don't know. So each one of these people, what they have in common is they worked at one of our customers and now they're over at another business in Russia that gives me a reason to reach out. So I'm going to pause and allow anybody to ask any questions before I show more tips. So I'll look for the chat box to see if there's any questions in the chat. And so far, I don't see any. Okay. So let me show you a few other tips. So what we have here as an example is I've asked it, this is called the cross-reference search. So what if Yandex was the account that I want to target? So I see in the chat box is clear, nice examples, thank you. What if the current company I want to target is Yandex? And you see how when I open this box, these numbers appeared? That means from reverse engineering my customers, Intel, Microsoft, Thomson Reuters, past not current, these are the companies that have taken all of the talent from these companies, became CXOs, directors, and VPs of sales. So if I'm targeting Yandex, hopefully I'm pronouncing that company right, but all of these people are from my customers that are now at that business. So this is what we call an asymmetrical competitive advantage. It means I have a disproportionately larger advantage targeting this account because I have so many people inside that account that know who Sales for Life are, that went through our training, that used to work at Microsoft. I have a very relevant story. So now my account selection and prioritization shifts. I don't randomly call a Russian business. I'm actually going to focus on this account because I have an advantage of relationships in that business. So this is how we develop account lists. So once you understand that, you recognize that people also have this. So I want you to picture you're working with your customer success team. Your customer success team, hopefully, are connected with your customers. And let's picture that we have a customer. And that customer, as an example, on my customer success team, I would ask them, well, who does she know? Who could she introduce us to? Well, what they should be doing is going into the first, be a first degree LinkedIn connection, which helps. Number two is I can dive into her LinkedIn connections and I can click the company tab and it shows me the companies that she's most connected to. This is called high social proximity, meaning I'm not going to randomly try to ask for a referral. What I'm going to do is say, what if you introduced me to Softline? Because you know 25 people over at Softline. So typically the top 3 or 4 companies on this list, that person used to work there, their friends or their spouse works there, they are a top customer or a competitor, they have deep relationships in that business. And now I know, well, if I'm going after Softline, I have the perfect referral to get me into Softline. So I'll pause. Before I show you a different type of signal, a time-based signal, I wanted to see if there's any questions. Okay, I don't see any questions, so 2 more tips. The next is a time-based signal. So what I showed you the first time was a relationship-based signal. So we look for our past experiences to dictate where our future goes. But sometimes you don't have relationships. But time and job changes, also known as human capital migration, is the ultimate leading indicator to where a priority might go into a business. The priority might leave the business. They're doubling the department size, showing you where they're deploying capital or what's happening in that business. Or they just shrank that department in half. They cut the IT department or the marketing department in half, meaning that the CEO's priorities, they probably changed. So how do we, this is one example of how we monitor this. As an example, and you can do most of this in the free version of LinkedIn. I can't recall, my training department usually monitors what's free, what's paid. But in the paid version of LinkedIn, I can monitor people taking jobs in the last 90 days. So what I've started to look for in Russia, global enterprise and global mid-market companies, CXOs who are brand new to their job in the last 90 days. So each one of these executives are brand new to their job. You can see like 1 month, 3 months. What this offers me is a window into people that are most likely to bring in new initiatives. When somebody's new to a business, and if any of you have ever been new in the last 3 to 6 months, you remember you want to shake things up. You want to bring in new people, new process, new technology into your business. These people are more likely to change. So now you can engage these people with new ideas, new products, new services, new initiatives. An excellent way to open up doors. Any questions? There's many time and maturity-based sales plays, but I wanted to show you an example. Monitoring people in your market, in your target market, who are starting new jobs, and engage them early and teach them new things. So imagine that first 100 days on the job. What can I teach you to get ready for your new job or make you better at your new job? So I noticed when I was jumping on the last call, or jumping on the call, I want us to now think about what we've done is collected some great information, but how do I engage our customers in a bold and different way, in a social selling way? This is important because when I jumped on the call, I noticed that you were talking about video and the importance of video. This is the future. This is how communication, and I'm going to show you why and how. But as you're engaging your customers, there are only three things you can control. Think of them as levers or switches, like the power that went out at my house I have for a minute. What we can control in our switches are the stories that we tell, the mediums in which we tell those stories, and the cadence and sequence in which we tell stories. So let me explain that. I can change the story, the moral of the story, the ideas that I'm going to give people. I can change the communication medium. So do I use phone? Do I use email? Do I write them a letter? Do I use LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram? And then cadence means, do I message them today or tomorrow or next Monday? Do I do this 3 times? Do I do this 6 times? You get to choose all of these, but these are your levers of communication. When we dive into medium, I want you to picture, and I was doing this for a customer recently on sponsorship marketing. What I want you to picture is the power of video. Video offers you 3 things that the written word of email doesn't. And we use video on nearly every communication. Why? Because 1, it humanizes you. It makes you appear as a real person. Number 2, it's called synthesize, meaning if I were to try to email you this presentation and write an email about what it's about, it would be so long you would never read it. But what if I shot a 1-minute video that summarized it all? It's much easier to digest. And then number 3 is buying intent. I can track who's opening these videos. So let's make this real. Let's imagine that you wanted to share an idea. So we own 2 companies. I own a company called Sales for Life, training company, and a managed services company called Pipeline Signals. What if I wanted to share this with a prospect? I could always, of course, copy this hyperlink and put it in an email. But what if I thought a little bit differently? We like to use a free tool called Vidyard. And let me just see. Dear participants not having flight access. Okay, so team, I'm going to show you how to make a video. This is a Chrome extension called Vidyard Go Video. Okay, so I'm going to just turn it back on. So what this allows me to do is film in a variety of different ways. 1, I can film like this. I like to use this type of video when I'm introducing myself to a prospect, or I need to follow up on a next step where I don't need to show anything. Or I can go screen and camera. And I love this style because I can, as an example, start it like this and then shrink it and move it and then record it. So let's actually do this. Hi, Victor. This is Jamie Shanks at Pipeline Signals. I hope you're doing well. On our last conversation, we were talking about your sales routines and how signals could be critical, finding signals for your sales team to introduce them into your existing sales routine. What I'd recommend is I would check out this section here, and you can see this section here of identifying and understanding a signal is so critical and part of your daily routine. As you're doing that, what I want you to think about is thinking about looking at this particular ebook. What it's going to show you are the different types of signals you should be mining and how to mine them themselves. So as per our conversation next week, I highly recommend check out this book, and it will really help you think through signal intelligence. So I'm going to stop sharing here for a second and give this a second to render, because this video recorded everything I did with my screen. Hi, Victor. This is Jamie Shanks at Pipeline Signals. I hope you're doing well. About and how Sid used them into recommend. You can see it shows me scrolling. Check out this section here, and you can see it allows me to name this. It allows me to animate the thumbnail, but most importantly, it allows me to embed this into my email. So I can write any email that I want. It's free and available. Chrome extension. You can add to Microsoft Exchange emails, Gmail emails. You can see all these videos that we make. I just click and I can embed it directly into the email. I can then write my email it to anybody I want. And the read and response rate is 5 to 10 times higher than if I were to write a generic email. This is an incredible, simple way of taking all the things that you've just gathered from tools like LinkedIn and make them real in a social selling world. So team, with that, I know it's the top of the hour for you. I hope that this was of value, and thank you so much. And your strategy, do you tend to pitch people right away, or do you, this is a question from the crowd. In your strategy, do you tend to pitch people right away, or do you start with small talk and showing interest in the account field? What I typically do is try to find a way to humanize myself. I don't typically pitch right away. I try to find a common sphere of influence, and then I bring it from personal to business. I'm trying to sell myself as a human being first, and then move it to a business conversation.
Oh, thank you so much, Jamie. It's amazing, especially follow-ups with the videos. I think it's something. Yeah, thank you for that. And may I ask you one last question? This is about Canada's leads. For example, many of our participants, they would like to enter new markets, and you live in Canada. Maybe you have some tips and tricks about how to approach Canada's potential customers, maybe how to do it better, more official or informal, or maybe some other tips and tricks. What do you think?
I think the most important thing for everybody to remember are that people buy from people. People buy from people they like and trust, and people like and trust people like themselves. So I know that that was a mouthful, but what that really means is that people resonate with people that look, feel, act like themselves. So the more that you can relate to somebody, and that's why the power of video. I use video to introduce myself to people I don't know, to show them that I'm a real human being, like I'm real. And so people will gravitate to the humanization of that and then want to talk further. So the more that each of you don't feel like a robot on social platforms and feel like a human being, that's who people want to deal with.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. So I think this is it for your presentation. Thank you so much. It's very valuable for us.